This is Sam's Teach Yourself, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript all in one, 3rd edition. Was written by Jennifer Kernan and Julie C. Maloney. This is my first time reading this book. The previous live series was on C++, All in for Dummies, 3rd edition. Here's the contents. Here's the title page. Here are the ISBN numbers. Here's the contents at a glance. Part 1 is getting started on the web. Part 2 is building blocks of practical web design. Part 3 is advanced web page design with CSS. Part 4 is responsive web design. Part 5 is getting started with dynamic sites. And Part 6 is advanced website functionality and management. This is the table of contents. About the authors. Jennifer Kernan consults professionally on web design and web development. She has built and maintained websites of all sizes, from small single-page sites to large million-page database-driven sites for international audiences. She has taught HTML, XML, and web design online since 1997 and is the author of Sam's Teach Yourself HTML5 Mobile Application Development, Sam's Teach Yourself Responsive Web Design, and Sam's Teach Yourself Bootstrap. Julie Maloney is a software development manager and technical consultant living in Washington, D.C. She has written several books and articles on web-based programming, languages, and database topics, including the best-selling Sam's Teach Yourself PHP, MySQL, and Apache, all in one. Dedication to Mark and Jareth. As usual, you inspired me and kept me writing. Acknowledgements. I would like to thank Mark Tabor for thinking of me when this new book came out. I couldn't have had a good-looking book without Kitty Wilson, my extraordinary copy editor. Any errors are not her fault. And thanks also go to Julie Maloney for believing that I could take over her book effectively. I hope I live up to her reputation. Accessing the free web edition. If you have a book that you purchased, you can do information to do that. However, this is a library book, so I don't have that information available. Reader services. Technically speaking, if you purchased the book, you could go ahead and register this book with the website to get some additional aids. Again, library book. Lesson 1. Starting on page 1. Lesson 1. Understanding how the web works. What do you learn in this lesson? A brief history of the World Wide Web. What do you learn in this lesson? A very brief history of the World Wide Web. What is meant by the term web page and why this term doesn't always reflect all the content involved. How content gets from your personal computer to someone else's web browser. How to select a web hosting provider. How different web browsers and device types can affect your content. How to transfer files to your web server by using FTP. Where files should be placed on a web server. How to distribute web content without a web server. How to use other publishing methods such as blogs. Tips for testing the appearance and functionality of web content. Before you learn the intricacies of HTML, hypertext markup language, CSS, cascading style sheets, and JavaScript, it is important to gain a solid understanding of the technologies that help transform these plain text files to the rich multimedia displays you see on your computer or handheld device when browsing the World Wide Web. For example, a file containing HTML and CSS is useless without a web browser to view it, and no one besides yourself will see the content unless a web server is involved. Web servers make your content available to others who in turn use their web browsers and other devices to navigate to an address and wait for the server to send information to them. You will be intimately involved in this publishing process because you must create files and then put them on a server to make them available in the first place. And you must ensure that your content will appear to the end user as you intended. Whether a user has a screen the size of a watch face or a billboard. A brief history of HTML and the World Wide Web. Once upon a time back when there weren't any footprints on the moon, some foresighted folks decided to see whether they could connect several major computer networks. We'll spare you the names and stories. There are plenty of both. But the eventual result was the mother of all networks, which we now call the internet. Until 1990, accessing information through the internet was a rather technical affair. It was so hard, in fact, that even PhD-holding physicists were often frustrated when trying to swap data. One such physicist, the now famous and knighted Sir Tim Berners-Lee, cooked up a way to easily cross-reference text on the internet through hypertext links. This wasn't a new idea, but his simple hypertext markup language, HTML, managed to thrive, while more ambitious hypertext projects floundered. Hypertext originally meant text stored in electronic form with cross-reference links between pages. It is now a broader term that refers to just about any object, text, image, files, and so on, that can be linked to other objects. Hypertext markup language is a language for describing how text, graphics, and files containing other information are organized and linked. By 1993, only 100 or so computers throughout the world were equipped to serve up HTML pages. Those interlinked pages were dubbed the World Wide Web, WWW, as several web browser programs had been written to enable people to view web pages. Because of the growing popularity of the web, a few programmers soon wrote web browsers that could view graphical images along with text. From that point forward, the continued development of web browser software and the standardization of HTML has led us to the world we live in today, one in which more than 1 billion websites serve billions of texts and multimedia files. Note: for more information on the history of the World Wide Web, see the Wikipedia article on this topic, http://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/history with capital H _ of the web with a capital W. These few paragraphs provide a very brief history of what has been a remarkable period. Today's college students have never known a time in which the World Wide Web didn't exist, and the idea of always-on information and ubiquitous computing will shape all aspects of our lives moving forward. Instead of seeing web content creation and management as a set of skills possessed by only a few technically oriented folks, okay, call them geeks if you will, by the end of these lessons, you will see that these are skills that anyone can master regardless of inherent geekiness. Creating web content. You might have noticed the use of the term web content rather than web pages. That was intentional. Although we talk about visiting a web page, what we really mean is something like looking at all the text and images at one address in our computer. The text that we read and the images that we see are rendered by our web browsers, which are given certain instructions found in individual files. Those files contain text that is marked up with or surrounded by HTML codes that tell the browser the structure of the text as a heading, as a paragraph, as a quotation, and so on. Some HTML markup tells the browser to display an image or video file rather than plain text, which brings us back to this point. Different types of content are sent to your web browser. So simply saying web page doesn't begin to cover it. Here we use the term web content instead to cover the full range of text, image, audio, video, and other media found online. Other files contain CSS that tells the browser how a page should look. Bold text with a blue border, red color, and so on. CSS defines how the browser should display the content structure that is defined in the HTML. In addition, JavaScript tells the browser how the page should interact with the user, changing colors when clicked, making a sound when the page loads, and so on. Whereas HTML describes the structure and CSS the design, JavaScript defines the behavior of the content, or how it responds to different conditions. In later lessons, you'll learn the basics of linking to or creating the various types of multimedia web content found in websites. You also learn how to style that content with CSS and how to make it interactive with JavaScript. All you need to remember at this point is that you are in control of the content a user sees when visiting your website, beginning with a file that contains text to display or codes that tell the server to send a graphic along to the user's web browser. You have to plan, design, and implement all the pieces that will eventually make up your web presence. As you will learn throughout these lessons, it is not a difficult process as long as you understand all the little steps along the way. Hello, Motivation and Art, aka Banana. How are you doing? Good. Oh, that's great. I'm doing good too. I worked today, but it was a short day because it's summer and it was a short assignment. So, yay for that part. So I moved on to the next usual Wednesday thing. In this most fundamental form, web content begins with a simple text file containing HTML markup. In these lessons, you learn about and compose standards compliant HTML5 markup. You will then learn how to decorate it with CSS and modern style properties and how to affect the page behavior with unobtrusive JavaScript and modern JavaScript frameworks. One of the many benefits of writing modern standards compliant code is that in the future, you will not have to worry about having to go back to your code to fundamentally alter it. Instead, your code will likely always work for as long as the web browsers adhere to standards, hopefully a long time, and your code will work on a device that runs a standards compliant browser. Hopefully, most of them. Motivation Art said, I went out with my girlfriend yesterday. Oh, good. I hope you guys had fun. Understanding web content delivery. Several processes occur in many different locations to eventually produce web content that you can see. These processes occur very quickly, on the order of milliseconds, and occur behind the scenes. In other words, although we might think all we are doing is opening a web browser, typing in a web address, and instantaneously seeing the content we requested, technology in the background is working hard on our behalf. Figure 1-1 shows the basic interaction between a browser and a server. So just so you know, this is a short stream. Starting off, reading this right here. This is Sam's Teach Yourself HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, 3rd edition, as all in one, 3rd edition, as written by Jennifer Kernan and Julie C. Maloney. So this is figure 1-1, a browser request and a server response. Request made from web browser to web server. That's what happens. Then server sends response to web browser. Figure 1-1. The browser request and server response. I mentioned that already. Sorry, this right here is a read through. I just start for Sam's Teach Yourself HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, all in one, 3rd edition, as written by Jennifer Kernan and Julie C. Maloney. So it's just, computer stuff, basically. And I'm also doing something that when it's done, I'm going to go. I got a Wednesday thing I do. However, the process involves several steps and potentially several trips between the browser and the server before you see the entire content of the site you requested. Suppose you want to do a Google search. So you dutifully type www.google.com in the address bar or select the Google bookmark from the bookmarks list. Almost immediately, your browser shows you something like what's shown in figure 1-2. So that's figure 1-2, and this says visiting www.google.com. Oh, sorry. But it's still kind of helpful to learn, even at 13. The way things are going with technology, you might want to consider practicing some JavaScript. If you go to Khan Academy, Khan, and then Academy, Academy, and then just type up after that JavaScript, just Google it or whatever. JavaScript is JAVASCRIPT. They have a really fun way to practice coding in JavaScript. They're on Khan Academy, and it's totally free, which is the best part. Figure 1.2 shows a website that contains text plus one image, the Google logo, a simple version of the processes that occurred to retrieve that text and image from a web server and display it on your screen follows. 1. Your web browser sends a request for index.html file. Let me back up. Your web browser sends a request for the index.html file located at the http://www.google.com address. The index.html file does not have to be part of the address that you type in the address bar. You'll learn more about the index.html file further along in this lesson. 2. After receiving the request for a specific file, the web server process looks in this directory looks in its directory contents for the specific file, opens it, and sends the content of that file back to your web browser. 3. The web browser receives the content of the index.html file, which is text marked up with HTML codes, and renders the content based on the HTML codes. While rendering the content, the browser happens upon the HTML code for the Google logo, which you can see in figure 1-2. The HTML code looks something like this. Oh, motivation art. That was my timer. So I actually do need to go. But I will be finishing this section, and then I'm going to head off the stream. Then I feel like going home and taking a nap. So go ahead and concentrate on getting ready for church. And I look forward to spending some time with you after you're done with church. Either today or a different day is all good. Thank you so much for being here and spending some time with me before you get ready for church. I really appreciate that. Okay. Oh, but I will probably do some kind of stream later today. Just not sure when or what. And also if I can get an nap, because I kind of over coffeed a bit there. So hopefully, I kind of feel like I need a nap, but I don't know if I can get one. Too much coffee today. Anyway, so I was saying index.html. That's this one. And then this is what they're saying, the HTML code that makes this happen looks something like this, where it's img all equals Google, src equals, and then that stuff, and then the width is set to 275 and the height is set to 95. So it says that img tag provides attributes that tell the browser the file source location, src, alternate text, alt, width, which is width, and height, which is height, necessary to display the logo. You'll learn more about attributes throughout later lessons. 4. The browser looks at the src attribute in the, notice it's got the greater than less than pair, and then img in there, so they call that a tag. So the img tag to find the source location. In this case, the image logo for w.png can be found in the images directory of the same web address, www.google.com, from which the browser retrieved the HTML file. The browser requests a file at the web address http://www.google.com/images/srpr/logo for w.png. 6. The web browser interprets that request, finds the file, and sends the contents of that file to the web browser that requested it. 7. The web browser displays the image on your monitor. Okay, let's finish off this section and I'm going to finish the stream. As you can see in the description of the web content delivery process, Web browsers do more display act as picture frames through which you can view content. Browsers assemble the web content components and arrange those parts according to the HTML commands in the file. It is possible to view web content locally, that is, on your own hard drive, without the need for a web server. The process of content retrieval and display is the same as the process listed in the previous steps, in that a browser looks for and interprets the codes and content of an HTML file. However, the trip is shorter. The browser looks for files on your own computer's hard drive rather than on a remote machine. A web server would be needed to interpret a server-based programming language embedded in the files. That is beyond the scope of these lessons. In fact, you could work through all the lessons without having a web server to call your own. But then nobody but you could view your masterpieces. And that's part of what we're trying to figure out. Is I'm pretty sure I should get a web page so I could show some masterpieces. Well, on that note, this is going to be it for this live. I think I'm going to try for a nap. Maybe it'll work out. We'll see. Thank you very much. Motivation and Art. Thank you for anyone who I may have missed. Thank you for anyone who might check this in the future. Stranger things have happened. And whenever, wherever, however, whatever, just make the most of it. That's the most important part. Bye-bye.